Hello everyone. The importance of freedom can be known only by those who have been oppressed. Who doesn't know it better if not we Indians? In this chapter, we will read about South Africa's freedom struggle and the day on which it got freedom under the leadership of Nelson Mandela. This chapter is an extract from the autobiography of Nelson Mandela, who was the leader of South African freedom struggle and who became the first black president of free South Africa. So without delay, let's read the chapter. Apartheid is a political system that separates people according to their race. Can you say which of the three countries named below had such a political system until very recently? United States of America, South Africa, or Australia? Of course, it was South Africa. Apartheid is a system in which discrimination is done among people on the basis of their skin color. Discrimination between black and white. Have you heard of Nelson Mandela and his African National Congress? Mandela spent a lifetime fighting against apartheid. Mandela had to spend 30 years in prison. Finally, democratic elections were held in South Africa in 1994. And Mandela became the first black president of a new nation. So until recently, South Africa was under the rule of British and there was apartheid system. That means discrimination between black and white on the basis of their color. And after a long struggle under the leadership of Nelson Mandela, finally South Africa got freedom in 1994 and democratic election were held. Democratic election as it is held in our country. In that country also election were held. And Mandela became the first black president of a new nation, which is South Africa. In this extract from his autobiography is an account of a person's life written by the person himself. So this is an extract from the autobiography of Nelson Mandela named Long Walk to Freedom. Mandela speaks about historic occasion, the inauguration. What is the historic occasion? The inauguration. We will read what is it. Can you guess what the occasion might be? Check your guess with the news item from BBC of 10th May 1994. This is a news item from BBC. BBC is British Broadcasting Channel. Mandela becomes South Africa's first black president. So the news is titled Mandela becomes South Africa's first black president. Nelson Mandela has become South Africa's first black president after more than 3 centuries of white rule. So whites ruled there for almost 300 years. In our country, they ruled for almost 200 years, 2 centuries. There they ruled for 3 centuries. Mr. Mandela's African National Congress party won 252 out of 400 seats in the first democratic election of South Africa's history. So they won 252 seats out of 400, and that's how Nelson Mandela's party was the winner and he was elected the president. The inauguration ceremony took place in the Union Building Amphitheatre in Pretoria. Pretoria is the capital of South Africa, where the inauguration ceremony was held. The inauguration ceremony was the first day of swearing-in ceremony of the newly elected representatives. Attended by politicians and dignitaries from more than 140 countries around the world. Never again will this beautiful land experience the oppression of one by other, said Nelson Mandela in his address. While his address to the nation, he said that this beautiful country will never experience oppression. Nobody will be oppressed in this country ever again. Jubilant scenes on the streets of Pretoria followed the ceremony with blacks, whites and colored celebrating together. More than 1 lakh South African men, women and children of all the races sang and danced with joy. So people of all color celebrated together, men, women, children, all of them, they danced and sang and they were jubilant, they were joyful. 10th May dawned bright and clear. For the past few days, I had been pleasantly besieged by dignitaries and world leaders who were coming to pay their respect before the inauguration. Besieged means surrounded. So it happened on 10th May. It was a bright and clear day. And for the past few days, Mandela has been surrounded by people and dignitaries, special people, important people from all around the world. World leaders, they were coming to pay their respect before the inauguration. The inauguration would be the largest gathering ever of international leader on the South African soil. So inauguration was the swearing in day of the leaders of that country when the democratic government was being established. So there was international gathering, that means people from all around the world, they were there to witness the inauguration. The ceremonies took place in the lovely sandstone amphitheater formed by the Union Building in Pretoria. Amphitheater is a building without a roof with many rows of seats rising in step. That means a big building which doesn't have roof, like a cricket stadium, and it has seats to sit around. For decades, this had been the seat of white supremacy, and now it was the site of rainbow gathering of different colors and nations for the installation of South Africa's first democratic non-racial government. Installation means establishment. So for decades, it has been a white supremacy. That means white ruled there. And for the first time, there was a rainbow gathering. That means people from different race, ethnicity, different countries, they were gathered there to witness the establishment of South Africa's first non-racial government. On that lovely autumn day, I was accompanied by my daughter Zenani. On the podium, Mr. De Klerk was first sworn in as second deputy president. Mr. Mandela was accompanied by his daughter Zenani on that day. First one to take oath was the second deputy president, Mr. De Klerk, and then first deputy president, Mr. Thabo Mbeki. When it was my turn, I pledged to obey and uphold. Uphold means to support or defend the constitution and devote myself to the well-being of the republic and its people. So when it was Mandela's turn, he pledged that he would always support and defend the constitution of the country, and he would devote his life for the well-being of his nation and his people. And this is the speech that he delivered. Today, all of us do by our presence confer glory. Confer means to give glory and hope to the newborn liberty, to the newborn freedom, out of the experience of an extraordinary human disaster that lasted too long, must be born a society of which all humanity will be proud. Then he said that we have experienced an extraordinary human disaster because we have been oppressed, we have suffered for so many years, and out of this disaster should be born a society which everybody should be proud of. We who were outlaws, because of its policy of apartheid in South Africa, many countries had broken off their diplomatic relationship with South Africa because of that system of apartheid. So they were considered outlaws. That means countries did not have any tie-up or any relationship with South Africa until now. Not so long ago, have today been given the rare privilege to be host to the nations of the world on our own soil. So we who were considered outlaw for some time back, now we have got this privilege to host. That means to call people of different nations on our soil. And we thank all of our distinguished international guests for having come to take possession with the people of our country of what is after all a common victory for justice, for people, for human dignity. Then he said that I thank all the international guests who have arrived here today to witness our swearing in ceremony, and this is a common victory of mankind. It is not just victory of South Africa but the entire mankind. It is victory of justice, peace and human dignity. We have at last achieved our political emancipation. Emancipation is freedom from restriction. So at last we have achieved this freedom, and we pledge to liberate ourselves and our people from continuing bondage of poverty, deprivation, suffering, gender and other discrimination. So when a country gets freedom, a newly free country is not very rich, and there are very other different difficulties that they have to face, like we faced in India, like poverty, deprivation or suffering, gender discrimination and other kind of discrimination. So he pledged that our country will liberate, our country will get freedom from all those problems as well. Never, never and never again shall it be that this beautiful land will ever experience the oppression of one by other. Then he said that this beautiful land of South Africa will never be oppressed. Nobody in this country will be oppressed by any other human ever. The sun shall never set on so glorious a human achievement. let freedom reign, God bless South Africa. So he said that sun will never set on this beautiful country. That means there will always be brightness, there will always be light, and let freedom reign. Let reign here means rule. Let freedom rule, God bless South Africa. This is the speech that he gave on the day of inauguration. A few moments later, we all lifted our eyes in awe as a spectacular array of South African jets, helicopters and troop carrier rode in perfect formation over the Union building. Now then there was display of army of jets, that like it happened in our country on Republic Day. So there was display. Spectacular array means an impressive display. So impressive display of jets and helicopters over the Union building. It was not only a display of pinpoint precision of military force, but a demonstration of the military loyalty to democracy. So it was not just a display of pinpoint, complete precision, complete accuracy, but also a display of loyalty of military towards democracy and towards the new formed government that has been freely and fairly elected. Only moments before, the highest general of South African Defence Force and Police, their chests bedecked with ribbons and medals from the days gone by, saluted me and pledged their loyalty. Bedecked means decorated. So all the general at the highest post, they saluted me. Their chest was decorated with ribbons and medals that they have achieved due to their contribution in the military activities. They saluted me and showed their loyalty. I was not unmindful of the fact that not so many years before they would not have saluted but arrested me. And he also knew that few years back the same general would not have saluted him. In fact, they would have arrested, because Mandela was an outlaw, a criminal in the country few years back, because he was a freedom fighter. Finally, a chevron of Impala jets left a smoke trail of black, red, green, blue and gold of the new South African flag. Chevron is a pattern of V. So finally, the jets, Impala jets, they left a trail of smoke. Smoke was left in the color of the flag of the nation. Like you must have seen on 26th January, jets, they display our tricolor also. So the same thing happened. They displayed the color of flag of South Africa. The day was symbolized for me by the playing of our two national anthems, the vision of white singing Kosi Sekilal I Africa and black singing Die Stem, the old anthem of Republic. Although that day neither group knew the lyrics of the anthem they once despised, they would soon know the words by heart. Despise means hated. South Africa had two national anthems. One was sung by whites and the other was sung by blacks. And they hated each other's national anthem. But that day both the national anthem was sung. The national anthem which was despised by each group, but they sang both the national anthem, although they didn't know the lyric of the blacks, didn't know the lyrics of whites national anthem, and whites didn't know the lyrics of blacks national anthem, but they would soon learn both the national anthem by heart. And on the day of inauguration, I was overwhelmed. Overwhelmed means having a strong feeling with a sense of history. He was also aware of the history. In the first decade of 20th century, a few years after the bitter Anglo-Boer War and before my own birth, the white-skinned people of South Africa patched up their differences and erected a system of racial denomination against the dark-skinned people of their own land. Anglo-Boer War took place between 1899 to 1902, and Nelson Mandela was born in 1918. And between this period, the white-skinned people of South Africa, they patched up, they removed their differences, and they made a system of racial discrimination against the dark-skinned people of their own country. And the structure that they created, it on the basis of skin color, it was the most harshest and inhuman structure society or the world has ever known. Now, in the last decade of 20th century and my own 8th decade as a man, the system had been overturned. So now, in the last decade of 20th century, and when Nelson Mandela is almost 80, the system is being overturned and replaced by one that recognizes the rights and freedoms of all people. So now the system has been overturned and it is replaced by a system in which rights and freedom of all the people is supported and recognized regardless of their color of skin. That day had come about through the unimaginable suffering, sacrifices of thousands of people. So it has not been an easy journey. There has been a lot of sacrifices and sufferings. people whose suffering and courage can never be counted or repaid, so which cannot be repaid. And that day I felt, as I have on so many other days, that I was simply the sum of all those African patriots who had gone before me. So Mandela feels that he represents all those people who have sacrificed their life for freedom and equality. That day, long and noble line ended and now began with me. So now that day, the long and noble line of people who have died, who have sacrificed, has ended. And now a new line has started. A new line starts from me. That means a new line of free people who have another challenges ahead. I was pained that I was not able to thank them, and that they were not able to see what their sacrifices has wrought. So Mandela was also sad because he was not able to thank those people, and they are not able to see what all the sacrifices that they have done. They have sacrificed their life. They are not able to see the freedom what they have, their sacrifices brought. They are not able to see. The policy of apartheid created a deep and lasting wound in my country and my people. All of us will spend many years, if not generation, recovering from the profound. Profound means deep hurt. So this policy of apartheid, it has created a deep wound which would take years to fill, to become fair. But the decades of oppression and brutality had another unintended effect, and that was that it produced the Oliver Thombos, the Walter Cicillas, the Chief Littlest, the Yusuf Daddos, the Brent Fishers, the Robert Subukwes of our time. So it has created great people. The is used before the name of these people. We don't use the before proper name. The is used before these people to represent that such kind of great people has been created because of this operation, because these people has fought for the freedom struggle. Men of such extraordinary courage, wisdom and generosity that their like may never be known again. So these extraordinary people of wisdom, courage and generosity, kindness would never be born. As we say in India, we have so many freedom fighters, Bhagat Singh, Subhash Chandra Bose. So such people, the likes of Bhagat Singh, Subhash Chandra Bose, they can never be born. Same goes for South Africa as well. Perhaps because it requires such depth of oppression to create such heights of character. So to create such noble character, such great character, probably such depression and oppression is required. Then only people become so great. They fight, they struggle. My country is rich in the minerals and gems that lie beneath its soil, but I have always known that its greatest wealth is its people, finer and truer than the purest diamond. So Mandela says that his country is known for minerals and gems that is buried in its soil, but the greatest wealth of any nation is its people. They are purest form of diamonds, and it is from these comrades in the struggle that I learned the meaning of courage. So from these comrades, from these partners, he learned the struggle for freedom time and again. I have seen men and women risk and give their lives for an idea. So he has seen that how for an idea, men and women, for a noble idea, men and women, they risk their life. I have seen men stand up to attack and torture without breaking, showing a strength and resilience that defies the imagination. So he has seen people standing and showing their courage, showing resilience. Resilience is the ability to deal with any kind of hardship and recover from its effect. And they even die for idea. I learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. So he also says that you are courageous. That doesn't mean you don't fear. You are not scared, but you have won over your fear. The brave man is not the hero who does not feel afraid, but the one who conquers that fear. So a brave man is not somebody who is not scared, who doesn't feel afraid, but somebody who has won over his fears. No one is born hating another person because on the basis of his skin or his background or his religion. So no one is born with this feeling of hatred. People learn to hate, and if they can learn to hate, they can also learn to love, because love comes more naturally than hatred. Even in the grimmest time in prison, even in the harshest time in prison, Mandela says, when his comrades were pushed to their limits, when they were so much suppressed, I see a glamour of humanity in one of the guards. So he would see a pinch of humanity in one of the guard, perhaps maybe just for 1 second, but that was enough for him to reassure to keep going on. Because man's goodness is a flame that can be hidden but never be extinguished. The goodness of a man is like a flame that can hide for some time, but it cannot completely go away. In life, every man has two obligations, two responsibilities. One towards his family, parents, his wife and his children. And second one is towards his people, his community, his country. And in a civil and human society, each man should be able to fulfill those obligations according to his inclination and abilities. According to his ability, he should be able to fulfill these two obligations. One towards his family, his parents, his wife, his children, and another one towards his nation and his people. But in a country like Africa, South Africa, it was almost impossible for a man of my birth, that means his color, the African person, the black people, to fulfill both the obligation. Because in South Africa, a man of color who attempted to live as a human being was punished and isolated. Because people who tried to do something for their country, they were isolated from their family and they were snatched from their people. A man who tried to fulfill his duty towards his people was inevitably ripped off from his family, his home, and forced to live a life apart, a twilight existence of secrecy and rebellion. So a person who tried to do something from his family, he was for his country, he was separated from his family, and then he had to live a twilight existence. Twilight existence means to live secretly, a secret life. I did not in the beginning choose to place my people above my family, but in attempting to serve my people, I found I was prevented from fulfilling my obligation as a son, a brother, a father and a husband. So Mandela says that first he did not choose his country over his family. He wanted to do something for his family, but when he was trying to do something from his family, he was snatched for his country. He was snatched from his family. He could not fulfill his obligation as a son, a brother and a husband. So he chose his family first, but then when he chose his country, he was snatched from his family. I was born with a hunger to be free. Mandela was born free. He was able to run in his fields near his mother's hut. He was free to swim. He was free to run through his village. He was free to roast his millets under the stars, ride on the back of bulls. As long as he obeyed his father and abide by the custom of his tribe, he was not troubled by the man of law or God. So he said that he was born free. So it was only when I began to learn that my boyhood freedom was an illusion. It was an illusion. He was actually not free. When he learned that, he discovered that as a young man, his freedom has already been taken from him. Then was the time when his hunger for freedom increased. At first, as a student, he wanted freedom only for himself, a transitory, a momentary freedom for being able to stay out at night, read as he wanted to and go wherever he chose to. Later, as a young man in Johannesburg, I yearned for the basic and honorable freedom. So of achieving my potential or earning my keep. So later as a man in Johannesburg, he yearned, he wanted his freedom to keep the money that he was earning, his freedom to marrying and having family, and the freedom which a person should have. But then I slowly saw that not only was I not free, but my brothers and sisters were not free. Then he realized that it is not just that his freedom has been taken, but the freedom of his brothers and sisters. That means people like him, the black people of South Africa, their freedom has also been taken. And I saw that it was not just my freedom that was curtailed, but the freedom of everyone who looked like me. Curtail means reduce. But also the freedom of everyone who looked like him, the black people, their freedom has also been taken. And that was when he joined African National Congress, and that is when the hunger for his own freedom became the hunger for the freedom of his people. It was this desire for the freedom of his people to live their life with dignity and self-respect that animated my life. Animated means make lively. So that became the purpose of his life, that he wants freedom for everybody who looks like him. That transformed a frightening young man into a bold one and drove a law-abiding attorney to become a criminal. So was he a criminal? No, he was not a criminal. He was a freedom fighter who was considered criminal by the people who ruled their country. that turned a family-loving husband into a man without a home, that forced a life-loving man to live like a monk. So when he wanted freedom for his people, then from a family person he became a criminal. He had to run here and there, he had to spend life like a monk, without family, without house. I am no more virtuous or self-sacrificing than the next man, but I found that I could not even enjoy the poor and limited freedom I was allowed when I knew my people were not free. So he says that I am a virtuous person, and I am equally virtuous. I have equal principle as any other person. But then he found that he could not enjoy his freedom if it is limited. If his people are not given freedom, then he is also not free. Freedom is indivisible. The chains on any one of my people were the chains on all of them. So he says that freedom is undivided. It is not that if you are free and other person is not free, then you are free. No, you are also not free unless everybody like you is free. So freedom is undivisible. Everybody has to be free for you to enjoy your freedom. The chains on all my people were the chains on me. I knew that the oppressor must be liberated. That means free just as surely as the oppressed. So not just the person who is being oppressed should be liberated, should be freed, but the person who is oppressing other, he should also be freed. A man who takes away another man's freedom is a prisoner of hatred. He is locked behind the bars of prejudice and narrow-mindedness. Prejudice means a strong dislike without any reason. So person who takes away freedom of other man, he is also a prisoner. He is prisoner of hatred, prejudice and narrow-mindedness. He is locked behind the prison which is within his mind. He has hatred, he has prejudice and he has narrow-mindedness. So he should also be free. I'm not truly free if I'm taking away someone else's freedom, just as surely as I'm not free when my freedom is taken from me. So I am not free if I take away someone else's freedom, like I am not free when somebody takes my freedom. So the oppressor and the oppressed both should be liberated. The oppressed and the oppressor alike are robbed of their humanity, because both of them has been robbed. The person who has been oppressed his freedom has been taken, but the person who is taking away another person's freedom, his freedom has also been taken. His freedom of open-mindedness, his freedom of love, his freedom of liking each other, that has been taken. So he is also a prisoner. So in order to everybody be free, everyone should be free, whether it is in your mind or in your heart, or whether it is actually you're oppressed. There should be freedom for everything. There should be love. Love should prevail. There should be justice. There should be equality. This is the message that Nelson Mandela gave through his speech and his autobiography. So this is the end of this chapter. In the next video, we will see the question answers of the chapter. Bye bye. Take care.